Hey, Chris, I wanted to ask about Georgia and where you see them going after the win over Clemson and moving forward. You talked about Alabama earlier. We got a long way to go, but it seems like those two are on a collision course for the conference championship.
I knew that folks would begin to talk about the collusion course as soon as they got out of there with a big W, and I think it's normal to do that given what lies ahead. I mean, I know Auburn's on the schedule, but I also know that Georgia's had an edge in that series head to head. So if you look at their first five SEC opponents, I think it's pretty one-sided in favor of Georgia in recent years. Doesn't mean it's going to produce the same result, but it means that folks will begin to look ahead to the cocktail party, which I will always call it, by the way, regardless of whether or not that's viewed as PC in Jacksonville. To me, it's the cocktail party. I've had the pleasure of seeing that game, and I would never look past the emotions of that game. So if you're going to point out to a showdown, I'd point to the showdown with Florida first, because that's anything but a foregone conclusion. I would think Georgia fans would not take that one lightly and take it for granted based on what happened last year. So, that to me looms as a real midseason showdown. But as anybody knows that follows them, there's no free passes. There's no one that's going to lay down and let Georgia march toward whatever goal they want to achieve. And I think that you got to be on upset alert every week in the SEC. So that includes obviously the game with Auburn. But I mean, they look pretty damn good. I mean, I didn't mean they'd answered every question with Clemson, but they were up to the challenge defensively. I thought it was obviously a tremendous performance, and if they can keep that personality where their front and their pass rush can be the key component in every game, I think they'll feel good about their chances. Isn't that amazing? That's where we are. Is there a path to a potential loss for this team? I mean, that's one of the takeaways from the first few weeks is that, okay, it's good that the status quo is shaken up a bit. You could put quotes around it and say it's good for the sport that Georgia took a loss, Georgia beat Clemson, that the Tigers took a loss, that Ohio State took a home loss. But what that also reinforces that Alabama has looked pretty damn hard to beat, and that clearly seems to be the team to beat. So, I mean, the fact that they were 2-touchdown favorite in a place like the Swamp against a team that, won the division last year, says a lot. But yeah, there are always new challenges and new tests for teams. And, Bryce Young looks like he's played the position for 20 years, incredibly. But every week is a new test, and every environment that you haven't experienced before is an adjustment. And if Florida's defense can be nasty and aggressive and force him to think quicker than he has been and force him to react and make it tough on the offense, I mean, I think the environment can certainly play a part. Alabama approaches these things like professionals and rarely gets rattled, but it's still a new cast of characters. And I think that the defensive personality of Alabama is pretty obvious. I think this team, I thought going in, would look more like a traditional Saban team as opposed to the ones that have been so explosive, scoring 50 points a game and clearly have an offensive personality. But, it's hard to argue with how the new faces have produced so far. I'm eager to watch the game. I will watch it in the afternoon before we go over and go to work at night. But yeah, I mean, if you're sort of using our imagination to figure out like where Alabama, might be vulnerable, here, this game at A&M, that's, could they be challenged at home? Sure. Got to go to Auburn at the end of the year. There's no foregone conclusions in this sport, but Alabama, I guess, is as close as you can get to it. Just amazing consistency, the machine they have in place, all the resources that are available to them, help them overcome challenges that other teams struggle with. And that includes, just being ready week in, week out for tough road environments. But I wouldn't expect them to stumble in there, but I also don't give anybody the W, going into the Swamp automatically.
Is Alabama's dominance good from a national perspective for college football, just overall?
No. That's the quick and simple answer. I don't think the dominance by any program at the top is really good for a sport that's as regional in terms of tribal passion as college football. And I think that there's different ways to quantify that. Actually, I think that I think that one of the things that has been, Frank, I've talked about this before, is no mystery. It's nothing against Alabama. You should try to be as excellent as you can every year and dominate and win all the trophies you can. That's the whole point of everything, right? And you can't hate them for trying. You can't hate them for being as committed as they are and bringing every resource to bear. But the fact is, there is fatigue at the top of the sport on a national level. And it's not just Alabama. It's all the same teams that have been fighting for playoff spots and getting into the 14 bracket in recent years. And as I said earlier, losses by Clemson and Ohio State bring people, wait a minute, let's come back under the tent here. Maybe it's not going to be the same 4 teams, but there's a chance of having fresh blood in the playoff. Maybe there are more contenders than we thought. But Alabama punishing people early, and as I said, going into the swamp is one of those games where your antenna is up, both as an Alabama supporter and player, but also as a national person. If they go in there and dominate Florida, it's just more reinforcement of where they are at the moment and how they're able to reload. It's unprecedented, as you know, following them, to be able to reload from losing whatever is half a dozen first-round draft picks on offense and then go in there and have a guy that has not played the position before at the college level come in and be as good as Young is and have the supporting cast and everything else. We knew they were going to be tough on defense. But no, you want to have the idea at college football, if you're going to view it as competing with other sports have much more parity and much more balance. And the cast of contenders, the complexion changes somewhat season to season. I mean, we know that, the Chiefs are still good. We know the top teams in the NFL are not going to change every year, but the opportunity exists to make a big improvement and jump into it and contend. And we've seen that, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball. There's just a lot more balance than there is in college football. And that is one of the things that I think does hamper the growth of the playoff and the popularity of the playoff. Even if you expand the playoff, okay, now you've got more participation, but is the Final Four any different? You're going to go to Tuscaloosa and win a quarterfinal game? Good luck with that. Will we get the same teams in contention for it? I really think that we're in a period of time where, yes, it would be good for the sport to have more teams in the playoff mix from all regions of the country and more teams that have the perceived potential to win a championship. Because I've said this before, the number of teams that potentially can make the playoff, okay, there's whatever number you put on that, a dozen, 10, the number of teams that can win 2 playoff games and leave with the trophy while beating Bama, Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia, Oklahoma along the way. Smaller, tiny number, actually, in the minds of most people. Now, maybe something happened this year to shake things up, but that's how it looks. So, no, one team being seen as a given, hand them the trophy, that's not good for any sport. And I think Bama fans shouldn't care about that, but that is the reality if you view it from a national perspective.